Hi, I'm Malia Lazu, and I'm your host for this episode of GBH Amplifies. We're going to be talking to 3 women about how we thrive in 2025, coming right up. Hi, everyone. My name is Malia Lazu, and welcome to another episode of GBH Amplifies. I am so happy to be here today with 3 amazing women who exemplify the journey of thriving while helping others at the same time. Each of our guests has amazing stories to share and insights that we will all learn from. Today, we're going to figure out how we find our purpose, pleasure, and how we thrive in 2025. So, audience, get your questions ready. It is my pleasure to introduce the women who will be taking us on this journey today. First, Giselle Byrd. She is the Executive Director of the Theater Offensive and a State Commissioner on the Mass Commission on the Status of Women. So we're going to be learning a lot from you, Giselle. Thank you for joining us.
Thank y'all for having me.
Our next guest is Sasha Goodfriend, who is the Executive Director of MassNOW and a new mother. Welcome, Charlie Rose. And lastly, but hardly least, Dr. Lucy Lomas, who is a gynecologist and the founder of Lucy, a holistic healthcare practice that educates and empowers women to prioritize their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. You can see why I brought these women together. And obviously, 2025 has been an interesting year to be a woman. And I want to start, and Giselle, we'll start with you and then go down. Let's settle in. What does thriving mean to you, Giselle?
For me, with these, I don't call them unprecedented. These are very precedented times. And so when I think about what does it mean to thrive in a moment like this, it means to galvanize and mobilize your community, to mobilize the state, and it means to protect everyone's humanity. I think we are living in a time where we are seeing bodily autonomy being stripped, First Amendment rights being stripped. We're seeing the censorship of arts and culture. There is so much at stake, and that's just here in the United States. And so when I think about what does it mean to thrive in 2025, it means to live unapologetically, to live freely, to walk closer into what liberation means. And that's collective liberation.
Yes.
Not just for one group of people, but for all people.
That's right. That's right. If one person's not free, none of us are, right?
Exactly.
We've learned that lesson.
Precisely.
Sasha, now, thriving as a mom, thriving as, you can pick whichever one, but tell us what you think about thriving and what it means to thrive.
Well, thank you so much for the question and for bringing us all together. I'm so glad that we're talking about thriving and not just surviving, because it really does feel like surviving is the first goal, but that's not it. We're really here to be unapologetically ourselves, like my sister was saying, and fight for liberation. And we can do that, especially here in Boston and in Massachusetts. I think as a new mom, what comes to mind first for me is sleeping. And I guess I mean sleeping not just in trying to get more than 5 hours of sleep a night, but also going to sleep knowing that I've done everything I can with my time awake to fight for social justice. And I'm so grateful that there are so many avenues to do that here in Massachusetts and in Boston that we are thriving. So many of us are.
I love that. And yes, we send you all sleep. Well, Lucy, Dr. Lomas, how do you see thriving?
Thank you so much, Malia, for having us all here. And, thank you for this wonderful panel. I always talk about thriving from the perspective of health and wellness. So I always think about our holistic version of health For me, that's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. But it's not just for me, the individual, right? I'm also a mom. So that's those same characteristics for my family, for my neighbors, for my community, and doing what I can to help us all get there and achieve that whole body health and well-being.
Yes, yes. I want to stick with that a little bit and ask you, we all had different definitions of thriving. There's also different definitions of normal and healthy. And as a doctor, can you help us understand how you help women know that they can't be contrasting and comparing their lives?
Oh, that's a really good question. I work with a lot of women all day, every day, and they come in sharing their health or medical problems. But what I try to get them to understand is, our bodies are normal. Everyone is normal. However, it may not be functioning in a way right now that we want it to. So what can we do? Either what medical treatments, what medications or treatments can we start? And also, what can they do to contribute to their overall health and well-being? So it's absolutely normalizing whatever is going on, whatever condition or experience that we have, without comparison or judgment. As a mom, as a mother, I think the comparison and the self-judgment and critique, that self-critic is so loud and so strong, and learning or unlearning how to quiet those negative thoughts is part of the work.
That's it. Well, and how you get to thrive. If you're going to keep beating yourself up, it's hard to thrive, right? You have to put down those negative thoughts. And, you talk about feeling, healthy and as a mom and comparing and contrasting. And I'll just speak for me and my sister, Giselle here, who I don't think you're a mom, right, Giselle? Not yet.
Well, I became like a fur mama.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're fur mamas.
Right. So we're mothers of
We're
a
responsible
sort.
for life. We are responsible for life. But we also can thrive in our womanhood, whether we have children or not. And that's healthy, right? It's not that we're missing out because we just have to take care of a dog and you all take care of humans. And I think we as women want to normalize however you want to live your life. That is normal. And Sasha, I want to move on to you, which is, why does it seem hard for women to choose their own agency? And can you help us understand why women's rights and the choices that we want to have with our bodies, why that always seems to be up for debate?
Seriously. Well, I think going off of that, part of thriving is about being able to take control of the narrative ourselves, of what is our truth and what is normal for us. And I think it's no surprise that we are still fighting in 2025 for our civil rights when this country was not built by women, by us, or for us. And women's power does challenge the power that currently exists that is trying to protect patriarchy and white supremacy culture and capitalism. So it's no surprise that there's a defensiveness when women's power comes and interrupts that. But I think that it's also a strategy to say that women's rights are up for debate, because that, I think, is used to exhaust activists and make us backpedal. And when we know that civil rights are not up for debate, they are non-negotiable. And so by taking control of that narrative ourselves and knowing our history, the legacies of matriarchs and feminists of whose shoulders we stand on, to know that this work is not new, these problems are not new, and also the solutions don't have to be new either. And we have the opportunity to scale up solutions that work, to show that we can create systems where we are not just surviving, but we are transforming the system so that we can thrive and be ourselves unapologetically.
That's so important to talk about the systems, right? And that this isn't happening naturally, that this is something that was designed, and it happened by design. And when I think of my mother and I, my mother marching for rights that I was born with and that we're now marching for again. And it's like within one generation, we're back here. And Giselle, you know, when you and I were talking about thriving, you went to the past. And I so loved this. And you were talking about the importance of leaning on our ancestors. And can you just help us? Can you take us there a little bit and help us understand who are some of the ancestors? How do you lean on them so that we all too can, you know, maybe get a list of folks that we can breathe into when we need support?
No, absolutely. And again, I'm just like still soaking up everything Dr. Lucy and Sasha have been saying, because we are so powerful and we come from such a rich history of women of all varied experiences. So I'm just like sitting in a moment of this joy that I'm feeling, and like, thank you again for having me here, because this is what I needed to thrive today.
Amen.
When I think about the ancestors and transcestors, and by transcestor I mean a trans ancestor, because many of them were unseen, unspoken, they gave us a blueprint. They gave us the guide map. If you really look at this moment now, this is no different from what Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera were fighting during the Stonewall riots. This is nothing different from what Lucy Hicks Anderson was fighting when she was on trial in New York for really being persecuted for being a trans woman. And this is also, you know, we saw the suffragist movement. However, we saw a very white suffragist movement. And then you think about Frances Thompson, who was the first Black trans woman or I believe trans woman in general, to testify before Congress after the Memphis riots. And each of them has gifted us this blueprint about what it means to activate the voice, to activate the body, and activate the mind. We see through history how to organize. You think about the Black Panther movement, you think about the Civil Rights movement, but even the movements around early emancipation, and specifically looking at communities of color and also queer and trans people of color. These are some folks who have often fought against these systems that Sasha was talking about, these systems of oppression that are meant to wear you down to where you just succumb to whatever is placed on the plate before you. And so I think about those people, and I also take it back to, let's get real. This is indigenous land.
That's right.
Yes, it is.
And so our indigenous ancestors, that was a genocide. And
Thank you.
They truly carved this land for us to even think of the concept of thriving in 2025. And so when we think about these historical movements, they included everybody. They weren't selective. If we even think around Black Lives Matter, there was the selective use of a lot of cis Black bodies. But there was this quiet, very quiet absence of trans, non-binary, and gender expansive bodies that had fallen victim to very similar harm. I think of Tony McDade in Florida, specifically. And so when we look back at history, we see how our ancestors and transcestors said everyone must be liberated.
That's it.
And so it's a guide map that we've attempted to follow, but because of capitalism, because of white supremacy and patriarchy, folks may believe that we need to do a sort of order of operations. Who matters the most first? We all matter. And I was recently at a summit, and I just said it, point blank, I said, my humanity isn't up for debate.
That's right.
Nobody's humanity is up for debate.
That's right.
And I think when we look at our liberation movements of the past, that was a key piece, even if they didn't agree fully. But you have to respect everyone's right to live a life
That's right.
of their choosing.
That's right. You know, it reminds me of a meme I've seen recently of a Irish activist from Ireland saying how it breaks her heart to see how the Irish Americans treat African Americans because, and she says, you don't understand what's happening in Ireland if you don't have solidarity with Black people. And you see that in liberation movement and in conversations, right? We are not free until we're all free. You know, the disability rights movement, right? Until we're a fully inclusive movement, until we're an accessible movement, we're not a movement, right? And that's such an important gift that the past also shows. If you do it a different way, you're going to end up backstabbing, right? You're going to end up capitulating. Sasha, I would love to ask you, you know, holding such a historic organization, how do you think about the past? And then Lucy, will get to you as well. But
I think, so MassNOW has been around for over 55 years fighting for a feminist democracy. And I think when we think about what we need to do differently and strategically, thinking about making sure our movement is inclusive and representational of the people we're trying to serve is key and the number one place to start. Because if you don't have representational, diverse leadership, then you shouldn't be organizing in that space, point blank. And so MassNOW has had these conversations now for many years where we've recognized how white supremacy culture has played a role in our organization's work, because without having those explicit and transparent conversations, we couldn't get to a point right now where we can work in solidarity and coalitions with many TQ BIPOC-led organizations so that we can know that our legislative agenda is informed by the people that we are trying to serve. And that said, I think that there's a role, you know, there's this way of looking at the past where there was the women's movement and the civil rights movement. And I think if we break away from that binary of there being one movement and think about there being many movements, we can find many ways for us to lead and follow and be in work together. And so we have been able to see where we can show up in solidarity with other organizations that are leading political work or community building work, and then where we can lead where no one else is leading. For example, in trying to end period poverty across Massachusetts. Not a new issue. Literally, we've been bleeding since the beginning of time as a species, but it is new to be talking about it as a political issue and making the personal political.
And to even be talking about it, you know, to be saying words like period, and period poverty is, you know, shows the progress. And bravo to MassNOW. I think a lot of us, when we think about the National Organization of Women, we think about a white feminist movement where the majority of us wouldn't feel safe, of the panel here. And so thank you so much, Sasha, for really, you know, being a part of driving that forward, and for being, you know, some of the white women who say, actually, we need to do better on our side as well.
And it supports me too. You know, this isn't something I'm doing in service for other people, to be honest. This is because I think it will help my own personal family's empowerment in Massachusetts in order to have a commonwealth and an organization and a movement that is representational.
I love that. Lucy, tell us a little bit about how you lean on the past to help thrive into 2025.
Thank you so much for that question. You know, as Giselle was talking, I was just reflecting on my own family and my ancestors. So I was named after my great-great-grandmother, Lucy Valerie, which is where I get my name. And also, I'm also deeply moved and inspired by my grandmother and her sisters, the Clay sisters.
Oh, that already sounds like fun, doesn't it?
That's a vibe.
It is absolutely a vibe. Everyone is invited to our Clay Sanders Organization family reunion. But we have been gathering on an annual basis for over 50 years now.
Wow.
So when I think about, you know, people in my family and what we have been able to do or accomplish despite, you know, racist practices, I am inspired by my family and what they were able to do and what they were able to accomplish and how they were able to create joy and liberation for our family, and how so much of what I do and how I think about the world has been so deeply influenced by not just the Clay sisters, and certainly not just my great-great-grandmother, but all of the people in their orbits and their ecosystems. So those are just some of the small pillars that I have the luxury, have the privilege to stand on. But those are some of the things that deeply are moving and inspiring for me.
Well, and what I love about what I'm hearing you say too is that, we often think like thriving, all of this stuff, like, okay, what's the to-do list? Do I need therapy? I need to have a good mother and a good father, and if I don't have that, then what can I do? And the fact of the matter is that you have the building blocks that you need in your house, no matter what they are. They might be a book of a woman who does look like you and decided, no, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to act. It might be an aunt. It might be a grandmother. I know for me, it was this aunt that I had who, she never got married. She traveled around the world like by herself in the 80s. And so I was like, oh my God, like Auntie Diane, you're so amazing, And it was these things that were actually happening that probably helped set me on a thriving path more than my women's studies in college, right? It's what we build around us that I think we can all really take from and take from this conversation, What are you optimistic about? And Sasha, let's start with you.
I'm honestly
Because
optimistic.
we're thriving ladies, let me tell you.
So much. Well, I will say I feel very lucky to be in Boston and in Massachusetts, and I don't know that I would feel that secure over my own body or my own family if I wasn't here. So I want to, give a shout out to the feminist leadership, I'll call it, that we have been building as a movement to get us to this place right now. This didn't just happen in an instinct. This is work that we've been doing in Massachusetts for a long time. I'm optimistic about being able to scale up solutions that work. I think that there's a lot of naysayers out there, but we are able to show that we can end period poverty, we can end homelessness. And I'll say one project that I think I'm most proud of in my life is working with the Transgender Emergency Fund, where we made the goal not just to help people get out of poverty, but we were able to work with the city and the state to open up the first transitional housing program for trans individuals in New England.
Amen.
And that work to interrupt cycles of poverty and give people a place to live
and thrive,
and
help women thrive.
Exactly, has been happening for the last 3 years and is continuing to grow. And so I'm very grateful to be a part of this work.
There are many reasons to be optimistic. What about you, Giselle? What are you optimistic about?
I'm optimistic that everyone's going to recognize that no one is exempt from harm. No one is exempt from the harm that we are experiencing in this moment. And they will recognize that no matter what you do in your role, whether you're working in healthcare or education or arts and culture or in social justice or disability justice, you have a part to play towards collective liberation. And I hope, and I'm optimistic that through these systems of collective action, we'll find collective healing. Like I think about TEF, like you said, it's the only in New England. I'm optimistic that we will continue raising our voices and talking to different legislators and build more. Because, let's be clear, there are many trans, non-binary, and gender expansive folks who are flocking to New England because of the sanctuary-esque status. But I'm optimistic that over time we will actually work to define and codify what it means to be a sanctuary, because there are so many more protections that need to be put in place. And I'm optimistic that we're going to start solving the murders of Black trans women and of trans youth who we have lost. I'm optimistic that we are going to start recognizing that so much of our culture has been built around how the most marginalized voices gathered and
Amen.
organized, and pay homage to those people, but also give them their flowers and
That's
give them the
right.
justice that they deserve. To me, collective action and collective healing also calls for collective justice and accountability.
Fabulous, fabulous, wonderful. Well, we are going to have to take a question from the audience. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Caroline, and I was wondering, how do you see the new presidential mandate to remove DEI from the workplace, how it's going to be affecting the women's movement and empowering women in the workplace? Is it going to bring us back, or how can we move our own power to, get better positions and just
And
be able
continue
to,
the
especially being
journey.
a minority woman?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so her question is, how does this current moment, DEI, the shifts around women, how is it going to shift our desires to continue to progress? We have 4 career women sitting here who know we belong. And so who wants to, Sasha, do you maybe want to take that question?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is that I think it is a scare tactic to get companies and organizations to stop talking about DEI. And the number one thing I've seen organizations do is saying, no, you're not going to bully us into stop talking about DEI. And people are taking up a stand and fighting. And so I think our work cannot be erased. Our identities and our personhood cannot be erased. And if we need to find different avenues to do that, then we can. But to not give in proactively
That's
towards
it.
minimizing the strategy that we know DEI is under attack because it's working. And women's power is under attack because it's also working, that women are becoming empowered.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's important to remember, as long as we decide that we're going to be human and we're going to be included, the fight continues, right? Lucy, tell us a little bit about optimism, but also if you want to address that question as well.
I was actually just thinking about that. I am optimistic. I stay and remain optimistic because I have hope. I have hope for a vision, for a future that is just generally more inclusive. I think that we all people, we are all humans. So it doesn't make sense to me when, someone's humanity is questioned or judged, or their choices, or if their choices are not impacting you, why does it matter? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's about remaining hopeful and making sure that I have a strong vision and idea about where I'm going and what I'm moving toward. I don't have to have all the steps to get there, but as long as I have some idea of some to move forward, that's all.
Right.
And as far as these attacks on DEI, it is just that. It is a scare tactic. The work doesn't change. The work may change names, and it may fall under different umbrella terms, but the people that want to see change, the people that want to impact the systems will continue to do that work no matter what title it has.
Well, I think that's a word to end on, ladies. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lucy, Giselle, Sasha. It means the world to me, when we came and I decided I want to amplify the conversation that women are having. And you guys answered my call and came down and joined us. So thank you so, so much for joining us.
Thank you, Queen.
And thank you for joining us in the electronic ether internet world. This is Malia Lazu with GBH Amplifies.